But this is not as stressful as the poetry slam was last
Oh,
year for
that's,
April.
yeah.
That was the most stressful.
Let's see if this is just gonna look nice. Is there
It's pink. All right, we can hear Sarah whispering, so we're good.
I'm too short to reach the thing, right? So that means that I had to try to find the remote.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
We got it. Sound check complete.
Done and done.
Hello there.
Hello.
Jamie.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Thanks for your help. Where's the live stream?
This
So
was
that
so
should,
exciting.
so that should come to my channel.
It is. It's right now it's streaming right now, so if you share it.
So if I share the link, if I go to Thursday, September 9th, 2021, live and in person from John Ray Middle School for the first time since March of 2020. The first item of business is the approval of minutes for June 30th, July 6th, joint with Iste and Region 9, July 16th, August 13th, and August 24th. Are there any comments or corrections on any of these minutes? Hearing none, we'll deem them all approved by unanimous consent. Move on to item 3 of the agenda, which is public comment. Mike?
Thank you. Nice to be back. Great. I just wanted to comment about, Mike D'Agostino, 18 Glen Hill Road. I just wanted to comment about your only agenda item before we get there. And what I wanted to say is something that I've been speaking about at Region 9 meetings, and I think it's something that parents and all of us should be aware of and should promote, which is that this year, hot lunches are free again. They're paid for by the government. And the more lunches that we give out, the more subsidies we get back from the government. So it's better for us, the more kids that take advantage of that opportunity. And I also think it's a great opportunity for parents who have struggled to make that lunch, and it's good for kids to get a nutritious lunch. And it's also good, look at it like it's like you're on a cruise ship and you can just try any food you want, and if you don't like it, you don't have to eat it, right? You come to school and you try the different lunches and you figure out which ones you really do like, and then next year when you have to pay for them, you go to your parents and you say, I really like this, let's have it today. So, but I really think we should be promoting it. It's something that it's healthy for our students. It's good for us, and I think it's something that we should speak about at every meeting if we can, and just send it out. And every time we send something out, that this is a great opportunity.
Thank you, Mike. Additional public comments? Seeing none. Board member comment? John?
Thanks. I hope that we can either discuss possibly tonight or at a future meeting, but I'm definitely concerned because of our school population being 9% or greater under 12 or under 12. That the vaccinations just can't be there for the students, and if they see quarantines coming through, just what we're going to do to provide education for the students who are in quarantine. I know we haven't heard about plans for live instruction, but I want to better understand that. If that can be a possibility, I know there's a 108-day, live instruction isn't accounting for that. And I just want to be able to be addressing how we're going to provide the educational needs, because I wasn't as concerned about kids falling behind when everyone was in this predicament, but now if you have 2 classes that are quarantined and 2 classes that aren't, it's just creating inequities that I think that we have a responsibility to address.
Thank you, John. Other board member comments? Okay. Brings us to item 5, administration reports. And we'll start with Reading Elementary School and introduce the board to Sharon Gersman, our interim principal at RIS.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, and good evening to our audience. We've had very exciting first days at school at RES. I will say the children are thrilled to be back. The classrooms are alive. It's truly a great feeling to be learning in person. And I think that's, to a person, 100% agreed on. To begin, I'd like to offer a public thank you to Mr. Joe Alomio, our assistant principal, who has truly shouldered the lion's share of preparing for this school year. I'm grateful to him. I'm appreciative of his hard work and leadership skills. So I wanted to offer that to him as well. We have welcomed several new families and their students to the RES community. We have held tours and orientations for all. We have welcomed back our cohort C students from last year with contact made personally by our social worker and our psychologist with a check-in to be sure everyone who had questions has those questions answered and so on. At this time, as you can see in our report, we have 497 students at RES. Our grade 2 numbers in particular were populated most by our new enrollments. We do have 17 students who had withdrawn from RES who are now returned. So we're glad for that. We also have several new staff members this year with 10 new certified staff and 6 non-certified staff joining our team. It has been great getting to know them. There's a wonderful positive vibe. It's always great to have new folks come on board, and they're blending beautifully with our accomplished staff members as well. We are also fortunate to have 2 interns from Sacred Heart University, and they are currently beginning with their student teaching. They will then be able to substitute for us as we move through the year, which is a wonderful thing. Our professional development day in August was really fun. It was centered on our new math resource, which I'm sure Dr. Pearson, you both will comment on, and that is Envision. Our math specialist, Melissa Knoll, has been working steadily with teachers implementing that resource into the lessons, and that's taking off very, very well. So she's in daily contact with people, and I think I saw an email come by today with regard to new workbooks arriving. So all in all, I would say 4th day of school, we're doing well. We're coping with what we call living with COVID, but everyone is really on board. It's an all hands on deck, and we've pulled together nicely. So I'm very proud of the school, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions? Yes. Chris?
Hi.
I'm just looking at the numbers versus the projection.
Yes.
And obviously the second grade is one of the largest differences. So question number one is that having any particular impact, or are you able to
Class size.
spread out the over?
Yeah, I understand your question. If you look at the average number in grade 2 of each class, it's at about 21. And in terms of the size of our classrooms and the setup that teachers have created in each, there is plenty of space. We are able to adhere to the ER9 guidelines with regard to the amount of distancing between students and so on. So no, I don't see any, nor have I heard of any negative impact.
Okay, and then second question, again, looking at the numbers, it's a surprising shortfall on the kindergarten side.
Yes.
But a increase over the projection on the preschool side, and I'm wondering if there's any relationship there, or maybe kids who might have gone into kindergarten are being held for another year or something like that. And it's just a curiosity.
Yeah, well, it's a good curiosity to perhaps investigate. I'm not sure quite where we would get that kind of data, but that is what is shown here in our numbers.
Yeah.
So,
Or absent that speculation, is there any explanation for the increase over the projected?
the increase in grade 2, for instance, is that what you're
No,
asking?
no, the preschool.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we could check into that information because we will know how many registration packets we sent out to potential incoming kindergartners, and then how many parents probably informed the former principal that they were deciding to hold for another year.
It just might have an impact on what you expect the fallout.
Yeah.
That's-
I feel like we're close to 80 packets in May, and so to not meet that number seems surprising, because usually we tip over the packets that have gone out already.
It was 77.
77.
I would wonder what the effect of COVID has on that, you know, in
And-
terms of
and the math
parental
being-
decision-making. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, it could be anything, it just.
yeah, thank you.
I actually think that our board needs to be prepared for people outside of the schools to look at these enrollment numbers, particularly the to remember why we did 5 sections. And I watched the video of how we came to agree upon those 5 sections for each grade. And the business case for doing so was solid. You know, Natalie had data about students who had been taken out for homeschooling and for private school. And if we had anticipated them coming back, we needed to be prepared with this number of sections. So I'm comfortable in what happened, but I think as a board, we need to be prepared for example, the Board of Finance, or, you know, people, anyone really, looking at that and thinking somehow we've made a mistake, or somehow that we've overestimated need. I don't know what this answer is.
Yeah, my question tails off of what Chris and Colleen just discussed too. And I know it wasn't just before you joined us, but I'm just wondering, we knew, looking straight at the second and third grade numbers, we knew one was popping up and one was going down, and we had the flexibility to move that. And had we done that, and I don't know, we didn't find out until 2 weeks before, but that makes the number 17-8 and 18-5. And it's a lot, you know, no one's asking any questions then.
Well, our enrollment, and I'm trying to recall the exact number, it was somewhere around 41 new students were grade 2.
Okay.
Were actually in grade 2, and that I've seen happen before, where for whatever reason, there is a greater influx of one grade than another. Perhaps the time for the families to move and buy a bigger house or what have you. But,
And so are we not
That's a statistic.
limber enough to make a move, to John's point, to make the second grade, for example, 6 sections, to bring that number of students down, and then make grade 3, 4 sections to make that number of students higher? You know what I'm getting at?
Are you talking about this year?
Well, yeah,
If I could, I think there are other factors, including, we have a good eye on the students with special needs and how they're distributed, how they happen to be at different grade levels. And I believe that Joe and Natalie had talked about that and ultimately decided that this was the best approach.
I think that exactly to Colleen's point, I think the issue isn't the number of staff, it's the distribution. And from what I'm hearing, that it makes sense in terms of the specific kids involved. But I'm just wondering if you have any data about parents who chose to keep their kids home that we were expecting to come back.
I think it was even from cohort C or full withdrawals.
Full withdrawals.
I think, Sharon, you said there were 17 full withdrawals that returned.
17 returns.
But I'm talking about people who withdrew.
Right.
So you're questioning how many current
How many people were in
students are
school last year
withdrawn?
who withdrew for this year? I'm just wondering if that would have anything to do with.
Oh, additional withdrawals this year?
Yeah.
Not
Well,
returning. I know there were some.
Yeah, I know there were some.
We
So
can
just-
certainly get that for
Yeah.
you.
I would hazard a pretty confident guess, since I've been responding, that it's not a large enough number to have an impact on the distribution.
As much context, I think, as our board can have around this is important for us when we're out in the community, so that we can be prepared with accurate and intelligent responses.
Other questions or comments on the Argus report? If not, we'll turn to the John Beaver report. And welcome Megan Ward, our new principal of this building.
Thank you for having me. I want to echo what Sharon said in terms of the support in the building that I've received. Darlene Wallen has been such a pleasure to work with and such a resource as we plan for this school year. So I want to probably thank Darlene for all of her support as I transitioned into this new role. At John Reed, we welcomed 334 students on September 1st. So you can see from the comparison from who started the school year and the part of the projections, that we're running a little bit above what was projected. And we've had a great start to the year. We welcomed back cohort C students. I personally contacted the families and offered a tour through the building for any students who were in cohort C and maybe a little nervous about returning, to assure them. We had a couple of families take us up on that, and other students felt really eager and prepared to rejoin the building and excited to rejoin the building in person. We also scheduled 2 fifth grade orientations the 2 days prior to the start of school. They were about an hour each, where students met with us, with their counselor, met with us as a group, and then received a tour of the building and ended in the cafeteria with a nice sherbet treat. So that was a really nice start to our school year on Monday and Tuesday. We also welcomed new students into the building as well, with a separate orientation for students who were new to Reading. And we also met with the new parents of our new students as well in the building to activate them to our programs, and just to put some names with some faces as well towards the end of that orientation. We were really, really fortunate to receive a bench. We had talked about a buddy bench. I know that that was something that's been maybe spoken about and recommended historically. So we have a new bench that was donated by 3 former students. Those are listed in the report, but we'll give a shout out to Maya Cotter, Bella Olson, and Sidonia Malone, who donated a bench from their Girl Scout troop. So that resides outside at recess, and we've already had some students take advantage of that opportunity. It's in a nice shady spot out there. This week we have some students in our social studies classes learning about 9/11 in our classes, and Maria Fredericks, our library media specialist, who is also introducing students to some virtual author talks as well. And we have some clubs starting. Our open gym starts on Monday, which we're really excited for, and we have our art club and debate club starting next week as well. So fun things starting, trying to start the year as typical as a fashion as we can. And if you pulled up a few students at John Reed, you may have noticed that we have some new furniture outside, because I think what everybody recognized last year was that kids really enjoyed eating outside and being outside. It's a nice break for them during the day, so we're hoping to continue to improve that space for students as well.
Thank you. Megan, any questions or comments on the John Reed report?
I was looking up this number of sections in each grade, and I'm not certain what they are. For next time, for next meeting, if we could know how many sections we ended up with, unless someone else knows. If I could know how many sections in each grade there
You think they're
are.
4 portions?
Do you know?
I don't want to guess.
Okay. It was 4s or 5s.
I think it was 5s in 5th grade and 4s on that.
Okay. So if you could just confirm that.
I believe that's correct. I'll
Okay.
confirm those numbers.
Okay, yeah.
Questions or comments?
So just to note that unlike RES, the distribution of the unexpected increases is not as even.
And just one comment, when we're looking at the report, Yom Kippur next week is 9/16, not 9/19. That's Thursday. Next on to the superintendent. Welcome back, Dr. McMorran, the superintendent.
Hi, good evening. I have a few things to say, and I will address the issue that John Riley raised about what we're thinking in terms of providing service to kids who are in quarantine or isolation. The first is, the last time you were here, I was here with you, I think, back in March of more than a year ago, and I have this unique perspective now, and I want the community to know how grateful I am to the members of the 3 boards of education who have taken on their duty to guide the school systems through the pandemic. And I don't believe people in the public understand the dozens of hours per month that members of the boards of ed have put in. And they're always available to the administrators for counsel and thought partners, and the service they've done. It's truly, I mean, those of you here tonight, I rarely use the word in awe, but I am truly, just to come back and see your love and care for the school and the kids. And I'm sure that when people are calling you, it's not because they're demanding to talk to you to tell you how grateful they are. And I take that as a sign that they trust you. They call you to say, this is something important to me, please be my advocate. And I thank you for that. Also want the community to know that over this summer, when you had some personnel changes that included me coming back for a brief period of time, central office has brought in and processed and added to the staff more than 80 people in this last summer. In a busy summer, we wouldn't break 30. And that is at a time when central office itself is down by a couple of support staff members, and of course we're looking about the director of finance. So at central office also, the staff there has stepped up and stepped into all kinds of tasks and challenges with really without complaint. Nobody's saying, I'm the bookkeeper, why are you asking me about payroll? They've just been working together, and that has been under the extraordinary dedication and leadership of Vicki Cram, who happens to be sitting here. I didn't know Vic would be here tonight, but this school system would not be functioning today without Vicki Cram. And her partnership with Dr. Pearson Ugal and now our new director of technology, Ms. Grafani. So your kids are in good hands, in caring hands. And I know we'll be talking about when Dr. McKinnon will be taking over. So it's been an odd month and a half for me, having been away so briefly that in a lot of places my name is still on documentation. But it's also been a privilege to see that the school system not just survived the pandemic, but is continuing to prevail. Yes, you're going to have to pay attention to academics, and that's got to be a central theme for the year. Academics in a caring community, helping kids get ready for the future. So we are thinking about those students who are required to go into quarantine, who are required to spend time away. All of us, I believe, will have that same shared faith that being in the classroom is the very best things for kids, physically, emotionally, academically, and that entails using the multiple mitigation strategies, including these things. And I understand people's concerns about it, but we have to stay tight together. While you guys were working, I was watching the Olympics. And I watched as the athlete in the women's marathon, the American Seidel, who is running fourth, astonishing everybody, including herself, because she hadn't even been touted to be in the top 20. But she ran a really smart race, and she ran, there were 4 people in front of her. And she didn't give in, she didn't give up. She grabbed every water that came by. She kept her hat on. She ran in the shade where she could. It was a really hot day. And about 2 miles from the end of the race, the third person, the person right in front of her, just ran out of steam, unfortunately, and stepped aside. So suddenly she finds herself in medal contention, heading for the podium, and she's stuck with it, and she won that bronze medal. The third time she'd run a marathon. I encourage people to look it up. It was just such a great story of commitment to get to the end of the race. And that's where I think this town is. You are at a point where you're tired of wearing the masks, you're tired of observing the quarantine, you're thinking, maybe he's not really sick, let's send him in. But if you stick with the plan, you'll get to the podium. And what we have started some conversations with Sarah and Stephanie and I are starting to try to make a map for you of what is the continuum of progression of services from you have a handful of kids who are out, and so you're providing asynchronous instruction with assignments posted on the Google Classrooms and the teachers checking that. What we need to define, and we can't do this, we cannot impose this on your teaching force, we have to do it in collaboration with them. We've got some conversations started, and we're going to try to get this to a place where we can hand it over to Dr. McKinnon, you can continue to do this. What is the point? What are the conditions at which you'd say, okay, in addition to assignments, we're going to provide members of the staff to check in with the students, to help them organize their work, to ensure that they're getting the materials done. We need to define that. What are the conditions in which you'd find yourself saying, okay, now we have to do some of that direct instruction? I want to tell you from my distance, because I did not go through your painful year, I think there's a working assumption that it's automatically better to have a kid zoom in to what's happening in the classroom than not. And I think that's true in certain cases, maybe in a lot of cases, but it's not true in every case. We've actually had parents say to us, my kid's ADHD, there's no way that she can sit in front of 7 hours of screens. We need to have ways to get them in and out. So there are probably several points along the way when the age of the kid, the subject matter you're trying to teach, the number of students who are under quarantine or isolation would move you logically into a more connected place. Part of our planning is to have some of the staff that we can bring in through the ESSER funding to serve to be in direct contact with kids and make sure that that adult-to-child connection is being made. We have the interns at the elementary school, and they'll be doing their student teaching, but then they'll become free to do perhaps substituting in a variety of classes for us, or perhaps organizing this direct intervention and contact. And then we have to think about at what point in the teaching and learning of a classroom, you have 24 kids or 18 kids, how many kids in the room, how many kids out of the room, and what would that do to the act of teaching and learning? So the task that I think we need to get underway first is to map out those different criteria for different levels of instruction. The state of Connecticut has said if the whole district goes to remote, that day does not count towards your 180 days. But I think we need to define what happens for a classroom or what happens in a particular grade level. Students under special services who are homebound for some reason, their needs are going to be met through their individual education plans, through special ed under their PBTs. It's more how do we make sure that we're not letting the kids in quarantine just go off and see you 10 days later. That is not the plan. That's not our intent. Which is why I told you we hired 80 people this summer. We have not had the capacity to do more than start to map this right now. And we know it's got a certain degree of urgency to it. So we have spoken with some of the leaders of the associations. We have other meetings set up, and we need to bring Dr. McKinnon to this also. So all I can do right now is write you a promissory note that says, as the conditions change, the degree of interaction and support will change in a rational, logical way. To it also, I don't know if Dr. Pearson, you wants to add anything to that.
No, I think you've said it well. We've had many positions posted that we had hoped to fill over the summer with grant funding, either Title II or the ARPAS, or otherwise known as ESSER 3. And those positions would likely be put in the mode of support, but we want to bring those people in and provide some training. We don't want to have someone just sign on with us and then connect them directly with students. That's just not the way that we do things. So we had hoped to be able to fill them, and I was really hoping in August that's when we often can hire people that might have been looking for teaching positions and were not able to get teaching positions. So far, we have not been entirely successful. So we have permanent sub positions The intern positions that were not entirely filled can be flipped into the sort of permanent sub/support for students in quarantine. And it's really a matter of just confirming those hires and then onboarding them and then getting them connected with the kids. And certainly that was the intent all along, but when most districts in our area are trying to do the same thing, then these slots get filled.
Questions for Tom? Mike?
Before the meeting, I mentioned to you about teachers that are very concerned, and I like your comment about when folks come to us possibly about unpleasant things, it's possibly because of trust. And I've had contact with 7 members of the staff who are concerned with the vaccine mandate, who, in my understanding, they're not vaccinated and won't be. And also, one member that I spoke to said that there has been, right, I understand why, but there's been kind of a blackout of communication from the central office on this issue. And I say understandably because, hiring 80 people in the span of the summer is an amazing accomplishment in this economy. But that being said, it's being spoken about in hushed tones. They're very concerned about being outed and being publicly ostracized for choosing not to be vaccinated. They're concerned about the end of their careers. I have letters from them here. I don't want to hijack the meeting. I'd be happy to read them so you get a flavor for it, but maybe you can help allay their fears and tell them how they can remain unvaccinated yet still work here.
So let me tell you what I believe the case to be. And of course, if we all stipulate that it's subject to the governor issuing some further executive order or the State Department of Education taking a different position, we will of course be in full compliance with what we're directed to do by the governor or those he designates. The part of the reason that we haven't had a great deal of communication on this is that we made a commitment to the officers of the unions, not just the teachers, all of them, that the data we needed to collect before the 27th would be funneled to the one person who is designated as the HIPAA liaison officer for the 3 districts, which happens to be our human resource manager. And we've been working on a way to collect that data. I am very interested in protecting the rights of our employees. So if this sounds flippant, let me know, because it's not meant to be. When you cut through all of what we're directed to do, what we have in effect is a mandate for weekly testing. The governor didn't come out and say, this is my mandate. He said stuff about vaccinations and exemptions. But when you think about it, everyone is obliged to start with getting a weekly COVID test from a lab, not a home test, that proves that they have a negative, that they're not infected with COVID-19. Then, if you go, I don't want to do that, well, you can get vaccinated. Because if you're vaccinated and you submit evidence to the HIPAA liaison officer, then you're okay. If you are not vaccinated and you have a medical a prescription, basically, from a physician, a physician's assistant, or an advanced practice registered nurse that says you have a medical condition that should exempt you from the vaccine, then that covers you. You still have to get tested every week. There are some people who have a sincerely held religious or deeply spiritual, sincerely held spiritual objection, and they can also submit documentation towards that. We'll be providing them with what that is, or our HR manager already has. They too would have to get tested. So I don't mean to be flippant, but I think to meet the objectives of the law, it's prove every week through testing that you are not infectious to others because you don't have it. And that covers all of those categories. Vaccinated, therefore I don't need the weekly test. I have an exemption, therefore I do need to take the test. I have the religious exemption. I need to show that I continue to be clear of COVID, or none of those things but my weekly test. So I'm trying to think of a fifth category of person. Now, so what would I need to do if I am not going to get the vaccine and I refuse to get the weekly test? Well, then you're going to have your employment terminated as of the 28th of September. So that is, I hope, pretty clear. That's us applying the guidance that we've received from Hartford, and that is, as the way things stand now. Of course, the governor can come out and do something different between now and then. So if there is an employee who says, I'm not going to get vaccinated and I'm not going to get tested, that person will not be employed as per the governor's directive after the 27th. But it seems to me that there are several other ways to easily meet the standard that's been laid out for us.
And if there are 40 employees, will we be able to open the schools?
I don't think that we'll see that number, we don't think we'll approach that number. And so I guess your related question is, how many staff members can we lose and still have the schools function? And I don't believe in our community that's going to be a probability. All things are possible. It's a possibility, but it's not a probability. At least where we are in our conversations so far. Because I think that those who have concerns, I would certainly redirect them to the HR manager.
I would personally have concerns if we had 40 staff members refusing a vaccine and refusing to get tested.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have that number.
Okay.
So
I take that number out of the air.
Okay. I still want people to panic though, like,
Everybody's guessing here, but you're going to lose some people on the 28th, and
we'll only lose an employee if that person says, I refuse to get the vaccination and I refuse to be tested. And that would be, in effect, that person's choice, right? And the executive order and the related directions to us is, yes, in that situation, you would no longer be employed in the public schools. So to me, it's a question of, I'm just going to extemporize. Sorry, I know I shouldn't, but I can understand how people have objections to the vaccination based on personal convictions. I cannot understand why someone would say, I'm also not going to get tested. And I think in our community that would be a modest number of, you have more than 500 and something employees overall. So 7 people will have to reflect on what they want to do soon thereafter.
Mike, out of curiosity, the letters that you have, did they also state why they would refuse to, are they also stating they would refuse to get tested?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
That's me saying it. But
I think we've been so thoughtful and careful about protecting the privacy rights of our employees that I would be.
well, they're afraid that their status as unvaccinated is going to be released by the health officer, and talk about. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work.
That is a fear that is unwarranted.
Okay.
It is not only illegal, it's unethical. The data will be secure. It'll be known to the one person who has been in charge of all of our confidential information for 14 years, 15 years, and therefore that's of all the things we're afraid of. That should not be one of them.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm not trying to make trouble here, and I'm not trying to get you upset here. I just want to make sure I fully cover this. It was brought to me in the last 24 to 48 hours, and they're scared about their careers. They're scared to be outed.
And we talk a lot on this board about handling things with compassion and respect and empathy. And I would hope that we would all extend that compassion and respect and empathy to people that have made that choice. That's not a choice that maybe some of us made or all of us have made, but I would hope we would extend that to them in this and work with them as best we can.
And if I could, I'm sorry, if we could also draw, and the inference that I would draw from that is there are in the conversations you're having in your communities, there are people who are taking all public servants, all teachers, and lumping them together and saying, I know how all public servants are, they're all like this. And I want us to say, no, the people who work for you reflect the same distributions in every other way that your community does. So sure, there are people who have a wide range of opinions and they all work together. And I genuinely don't think that we need to be concerned about outing people's private information. They keep it confidential, they report it the way we've designed to collect it to meet the obligations of the law, and I think they'll be fine.
When we talk about treating folks with compassion, we also have to think about the many students who were cohort C last year for a variety of reasons, including that they live with immunocompromised or elderly family members for whom the risk of infection and bringing it home creates substantial risk to their families. And the concerns that they will have now that they do not have a cohort C choice, that they have to come into the building to be served by our public schools, and the stress that it puts on those families to know that they might be subjected to a classroom with one or more adults who, for whatever reason, don't want to be vaccinated. And their risk has now increased to them. And so I think that somebody has to also speak for and be concerned about them, regardless of what the reason is that people don't want to be vaccinated or tested, whatever it is. I frankly don't have a large concern that if folks don't want to comply with the testing or vaccine requirement, that they lose their job.
I also
You don't have a concern that they would even in that case?
If they refuse to be tested or vaccinated and their employment terminates, that would not concern me because it's a very reasonable expectation.
I don't want to drag this out, but I had a thought about this in terms of our health insurance. If somebody chooses not to be vaccinated, not because they can't because of an existing medical condition, but just because of a personal preference, and then they get COVID and they're in the hospital for a very long time having very expensive treatments, we pay for that. We pay for it. The town pays for it because of their personal choice. So I'm just saying there's a lot of other branches of this huge problem that we've all been living with for a long time, and none of them are good. I think what you're talking about is a strong indicator because also our vaccination levels in this town are pretty dismal overall, that we're going to be wearing these masks for a lot longer than any of us want to be. It's just something to consider.
I think we'll know a lot more a month from now after the September 27th deadline is coming past, and as there's increasing pressure on employers to mandate vaccines without exception, and where the state of play is 1 and 2 months from now.
I just saw that the president today said that people with more than 100 employees would have to mandate vaccinations also. Would that apply to ER?
I would hesitate to interpret
Okay.
I think we need
guidance
to wait.
today.
I would say that, none of us are experts, and I question whether the experts are experts, because, information that has come out for the past 18 months has been proven wrong, and then proven right, and then proven wrong again.
I'm not interested in going down the rabbit hole
Yeah.
of whether experts are legitimate or who gets news from where. I'd like to keep the topic to the schools to the extent we can.
All right, well, final statement would be that, again, I just hope we can respect everybody and their choices in this. And I hope we don't lose a single person. And, I think that some of the things that you said needed to be said, in public, maybe to allay some fears, and I appreciate that.
I would rather lose a staff member's employment over their COVID vaccine concerns than I would a member of our school community to COVID.
Fair enough, but I think what I took as the core of Mike's initial comments was to express a certain amount of fear, uncertainty, just general malaise about the situation because it hasn't been finalized. And I think that, so for you to bring that up and to have Tom's response, I think was very valuable.
And in a nutshell, so long as they're willing to get tested, they keep their job. If they're not willing to get tested, they're essentially quitting.
I think you really thoroughly aired it, and I don't want you to go down the rabbit hole of what if that happens, what if this happens. I would encourage any member of the board who's had a member of the faculty or the support staff or the administrator, whoever, who's an employee, to encourage them to bring their concerns to the human resource manager and to reflect on how this district and the administration have treated their employees over a long period of time. And if we have a long record of willful, malicious lack of concern, then I'd say people could heighten their concerns. There's a difference between feeling fear and having a justified fear. And we want to be respectful of that, absolutely. But at the end of the day, our overwhelming duty is to the children, and we have to all observe these series of approaches to bring to a maximal potential the way we're making kids safe and the people who work for them. So, thank you for bringing it up, and I hope that we have addressed the approach that has unfolded to us from Hartford, and there is thought behind it, and we will be doing what we can to be observant in the law. But I want to end this conversation with, if an employee says defiantly, I will not be vaccinated and I will not show you a test, that person will not be employed as of the 28th, or the first time they fail to show their weekly required assessment. So that person I would give counsel to. I'm going to stop, I promise. But I used to teach American Studies, and we spent a lot of time on civil disobedience, and civil disobedience has consequences to it, right? Thoreau it ends up in the jail because he says, I'm not going to pay my taxes for a war. It doesn't say, I'm exercising civil disobedience, and everyone goes, oh, okay, no consequence to you. So I hope if we can help those handful of people, I direct them to speak with Vicki in complete confidence. No one else needs to be into the conversation, and she can help them find their way to remain employed with us, which is what we want.
Any other questions on Tom's report? Thank you. Tom, Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Kusin-Nicole.
All right, I have a lengthy report this month, so I want to touch on a number of topics. The first is Summer Academy. We ran 2 very successful programs in this district this summer, so both at John Reed and Reading Elementary. So while in Reading, Summer Academy is certainly not a new thing, at the elementary level, we were able to offer it for more weeks, and we also partnered with the Mark Twain Library to offer a once-a-week library program at RAS. It was very well received. The parent feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So many comments just sharing how much the children loved the program, enjoyed an opportunity to make new friends, meet new teachers, in some cases become acclimated to a new school building. So in general, just the response was quite positive. There were some suggestions for improvement for future years, and the majority of the comments in one category were to add hours to the day or add weeks to the program, make it longer, and also the things that we anticipated. We were not able to get information out to families as quickly as we had wanted to. We were working with our teachers associations to get it up and running. Some people were saying we wish we had known earlier about the offerings. Some people suggested, were there different ways that people could share their input to help to create the courses, either by asking parents for information about what they were interested in having, which we did do, by the way, but just to have more opportunities for students, more options, particularly for the youngest participants in the program. Our staff made some suggestions regarding some facility upgrades that would allow more outdoor teaching areas and some communication suggestions, but in general, very positive feedback. Some of the programming was defrayed with ESSER 2 grant funding. It didn't completely subsidize the program, but it did help to reduce the tuition costs slightly. Typically, these programs would be self-sustained with the tuition payments from parents, so that helped with the cost of the program. The next update has to do with curriculum access. As we know that we had a delay in our transition from public access to the K-8 ILA and math curriculum through Atlas, and that was a link on all of the websites. We ended our subscription to that tool, unfortunately, right after we went to full remote in the spring of 2020. At that time, it was not possible to bring teachers in to do the work that was necessary to transition to Google platform, so all of that was delayed. So while some work was completed over the summer, it will continue this month with the goal of having it up and running on the websites at the beginning of October. So you can read more information about additional, rather substantial website improvements that we're looking to do. Sarah and I have been working closely on that, not just in terms of curriculum access, but how do we make the website more of a resource that's more dynamic and is not just static information for parents. As you've heard before, we are implementing our new elementary math resource. We've offered a number of PD sessions for our teachers, and Mrs. Fabeni is also helping with the tech side of things as of just this afternoon. Some difficulty with the rostering of students, so we are working through that and making sure that the students have the correct materials and the math program is getting up and running. The elementary math specialist will be planning a parent information session, and that will occur sometime in the weeks ahead. Finalizing a date on that. The Safe School Climate Committee, the district level committee has met a number of times over the summer and has made a number of changes that I outlined in the report. So that committee in the past used to meet really primarily to finalize the school climate survey questions, to make a plan for distributing the climate survey to staff, to parents, and to students. And then they get together again at another point in the year to review the responses to that survey, to discuss them together, to think about how that will inform school level goals and action plans. So we've made a number of changes. We really think that the district level climate committee is the right place for us to, as a leadership team, have more discussions that are broader, really to see how we can support safe and inclusive school communities. And so we will move that meeting to meet 12 times a year. So we will meet monthly, including in the summertime. The superintendent and I will be actively involved in that, and I've been facilitating those meetings. So we're taking over much of the work of planning professional development and thinking about what professional learning activities might occur in all 5 buildings, and when we can identify a goal, and then perhaps at each building or level, the implementation of that goal might take a slightly different form. So that's where the building-based school climate committees will come into play. So hopefully people saw a listserv this afternoon inviting parents to participate at the school level climate committees. Those right now are open, so rather than putting a number on the number of parent participants, the assistant principals really want to just put the open invitation out there and to see what type of response they get, and then go from there. And if there are many parents, they'll consider whether they can have multiple groups meet or whether they need to limit the size, but for now they want to just make it an open invitation. So a number of changes in the school climate committee area. We identified a 3-year goal, and then from that created a 1-year goal, and that will also involve a connection with the board DEI task force, so that some of the work of the DEI task force that has more of an operational function can be taken on by the climate committee, and then in turn the climate committee can report back to the task force of its activities. So really looking forward to that work. We've been digging in a lot in the last couple of months. The ARP ESSER grant has also been approved in both Easton and Reading. Final edits were submitted for Region 9 today. And you can see the 5 priority areas and where we look to spend the money. Those funds were really just finalized, so the buildings are working on spending the money. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Stephanie, any questions? All right.
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If there were opportunities for the summer academy to partner with Easton, I think that was part of the plan at one point, and then it didn't work out. I'm just a single board member, and I'm probably not going to be on much longer, but I would love to see that as an opportunity for our communities to work together, for our kids to be together, and if that can stay on the radar in some way, I think that's a great opportunity, the kids to get to know each other a little bit, even before Barlow, if it's possible. I don't know why it didn't work out, but if it could work.
I think it's a great idea, and I will say that in Easton, they were creating the summer academy offerings for the first time, and that's a pretty big undertaking when it's brand new. So now that they have a year, at least offering a summer academy at the elementary level, and we know now what's involved with the process in terms of the collaboration, we can get an earlier start, and I think that's certainly a possibility. We want to start to talk with our teachers about it much earlier in the year and solidify the logistics of coordinating with different town organizations, because that was not entirely simple. And then without much more planning time, I think that's possible.
And then also with the Safe School Climate Committee, I think if there would be an opportunity for, is there an opportunity for non-parent community members to participate?
Not on the actual committee, but because the committee now will include a monthly board report from me regarding the activities and the communication between the climate committee and the task force, I think that there are ample opportunities for people who aren't parents to provide a whole lot of input and to be kept abreast of the activities.
And then just, never be shy about letting us know if there's something uncovered there that the board can help with, if there's like red tape or some kind of obstacle that's in the way. Always be eager to know, try to get that stuff set aside so we can progress, really is what I'm interested in.
Thank you. It's, I'll share one more thing about that. So with the many different surveys that we've discussed over the last several months, I will say that there's an interest in looking at the numbers, and we can certainly do a quantitative analysis, and that quantitative analysis is going on right now. We hired an outside consultant who's a statistician who will take a look at survey data and provide an outside analysis. As educators, we tend to do qualitative analyses of quantitative data, which means that if we have 2 students who say they feel unsafe, or 2 students who say, I don't feel that there's a trusted adult in this community, then those 2 students deserve our attention. If it's 2 students out of 500, a statistician is going to say that's not significant, but that's not the way we do it. So I think that we want to be sure that we're keeping an eye on what we truly care about and not just.
Other questions? Thank you again, Stephanie. Special services for South Hadley.
So before I actually go into my numbers, I just want to highlight 2 things. The first is last year, this time, the state gave us a lot of flexibility on how to meet students with IEPs. You might have heard the term LMPs, which was learning plans. The state had basically said since they expect students to return to brick and mortar roles, the IEP needs to be implemented as they were written. So the concept of that flexibility is gone. So, again, there's been a lot of discussion about quarantine, what do we do for those students? So what we have been doing is, we've been doing it on an individualized basis through conversations with parents, conversations with teachers, so we can fulfill our mandate to those IEPs. This is also a discussion that's happening across the state. In fact, today we had a meeting with several attorneys, through our regional special ed directors meeting. What do we do for these students? What should happen if we go out? There's a lot of unknown answers right now, but hopefully as we learn more about what our obligations are and how we can support them during this time, we will certainly be implementing that. One of the things that often comes up is a shortage of staff. A lot of, they can't get speech pathologists, they can't get occupational therapists. Well, the good news is that we have been able to fill all of our certified positions in that. We had a couple of vacancies over the summer, and I think through aggressive postings and the fact that this district does have fantastic reputation, people were willing to take the chance and come and work for us. So we've been very fortunate that our certified positions have all been filled. Our paraeducators and our behavior technicians, we are still working to fill some of those vacancies. But we have a very committed group of people, and they're willing to roll their sleeves and partner with us. So all of our students are receiving their supports at this time, which I think is very good news. We're off to a great start. Last year, the board had the foresight to move forward with the Bridge program, and I have to say that I really think we're off to a fantastic start. We, last year, the kid that we currently have in our Bridge program couldn't even walk into this building because of their social and emotional needs, because of the pandemic. It could be a whole host of reasons. But this year, the kids we've identified, they're in the buildings, they're participating in their programs. In fact, I went to see the class today, and it was, what a difference in the year it's been. So I think that this program really is supporting those students, and it's keeping them here where they belong in their neighborhood schools. So that brings me to the board report. I just want to highlight a few things. As you know, I started doing comparative data from last year to this year. So our numbers are fairly consistent in terms of the number of students we have, but we do see a percentage drop overall. We went from 16.9% where we were last July and August to 15.1% of where we are now. Again, this is just a snapshot in time of where we were last year to where we were this year. In terms of numbers, we had 5 students that have left Reading, either to be homeschooled, they moved to another town. It could be for a whole host of reasons. We have 5 students between RES and John Reed leave us. But we've also welcomed 9 new students into the district. Again, it does not mean that they're in our most restricted program. They could just have speech on their IEP, or they could have, an eating a full special ed program. But we have about 9 students between RES and John Reed that have joined us. Do you have any questions for me?
Is there any consistency in the gap that has occurred from being remote for so long? Is there anything that's consistently happening or a trend that we should be aware of to help our students getting special services?
I don't think there's anything that we need to be aware of right now because I think that the kids' needs have been met. For example, I do remember a period in December where we were out, we were all out. Through, discussion and collaboration, we were able to bring back our most immediate students back into the school building. So I do think that we've been able to support a lot of them along the way. One thing that I do think we need to be aware of is that we've seen an uptick in student anxiety. And so what's happened is some parents have gone out and gotten evaluation because they want to know more about how they can support their child at home. And that they've been sharing that data with the schools. So we've been convening, you'll see in these reports, we've been convening more PPT meetings than we usually would because we want to be able to have the opportunity to review those reports to determine how we can best support those kids. So that's really, I think, the area that we really need to focus on. They're saying their anxiety is impacting their ability to participate in the academics. So now we're just trying to tease out, these data. Are they making academic growth? And that's where the interventions come into play in the classroom, teachers through their data collection mechanism. We can see if they indeed make progress or not.
Right.
About how many staff are you short, you said?
How many staff in terms of my BTs and paraeducators?
Right. You're not, you said you had all the certified staff that you really wanted, but you were short on the non-certified?
I was saying maybe about 3 or 4.
Okay.
But again, we, because we've had some movement, when I mentioned the 5 students that moved out, some of those students did require more intense support, so we have some movement in that area as well. But probably right now, I think I'm looking at my numbers. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I should have asked.
There you go.
And I know your numbers, the way you plan things out sometimes is somewhat formulaic. Your IEPs demand a certain amount of service per week, and that requires a certain number of people. Doesn't sound like 2 would cause you any sort of hardship in meeting the obligations. Just 2 being short term, you'll make it happen.
We're working on that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then about students that are gone, and I know you said you're still working with the state on this, but students that are gone on quarantine, what is quarantine now? 10 days? 10 days at a time? What happens to a student that has an IEP that requires service, each week, a certain amount of hours each week? If you can't go to the house, does that cause a problem? If we've told them to quarantine and then we're not giving them the service hours, how does that work?
Well, one of the things we've done is, like I said, we're looking at on a case-by-case basis.
Yep.
So, as you know, we've had a situation already, this school year. So the first thing the building administrators do, they give you a list of the students, and I said, okay, Mike has speech on his IEP. If you're only out for 2 days, because that's when you're quarantined, we can make that up. I can easily say, you come back, we can add another 10 or 15 minutes to your speech program.
You can get caught up, is what you mean. And so it's really more about the cumulative than it is about the consistent weekly numbers?
Yeah. If they have a push-in program, like the special ed teachers going into the classroom, that's when we need to have more of a discussion about how we can support the students. But what we've done in the past, this is not new to COVID world, is that we have a paraeducator that will often be in the classroom, the teacher is not in the classroom. So sometimes you will have the paraeducator, go into a synchronous session with the student and say, how are you doing with the work? So we have the ability to check in with all of these students along the way. And honestly, there are some parents who will decline services. They will say, my kid cannot be virtual. I do not want Zoom. I would rather have the material, asynchronously. So we're trying to work with them to make sure that they have the support at home, either through a phone conversation with them to make sure that their child can still participate.
Thank you.
Chris?
I know that you made it a point to say that these numbers are a snapshot. Particularly, I'm looking particularly at the numbers comparing a year ago. Is there any basis in your experience to think that the numbers will change dramatically over the next few months? What was it, July, August look, does a
Well,
January February look
But there are
different.
certain times throughout the year where we do see an uptick in referrals. Usually they happen around November conferences. You know, parent has a conference with the teacher and they say, my child's not making the progress that I thought they would make. So typically we see an uptick around that time. Or usually the grades that we see, the greatest referral, usually in third grade. Because that's when the reading demands get more challenging and the curricular demands get more challenging. But I actually looked at the year before, 99, 2000, and 2001, and they seem to be pretty consistent across the board. So if we're going to see a change, it's probably going to be around, say, November or so.
Right, but the overall trend appears to be in the same direction. This is
I have one more. I might have missed this in what you said before when you were talking about junior bridges. I know that the hope was that we might be able to attract students that were outplaced back into the school, to participate in that program. Were we able to bring anybody in that was previously outplaced yet?
We were able to bring somebody back in the elementary level because we had the bridge program at the elementary level. And when I look at each student that had transitioned from the elementary to the middle school, we probably save not having to outplace at least two of them.
Right. Yeah, I remember talking about that last year. But, even one is a pretty big victory. I like that. Thank you.
More an observation than a question to circle back to Colleen's comment earlier about class size at RES. I took Jen's report and Sharon's report and ran them against each other to see that in our second grade, where we have the largest class sizes now because of the uptick, we have an 11% special ed enrollment. And in third grade, we have the smallest class size, we have a 20% special ed enrollment. So there is some alignment there that is helpful.
That was part of what I heard in the video when it was proposed to us. No details, but just that our staff knows the students in each cohort, and this is what they're recommending.
And those numbers sort of align with that narrative. If there are no further questions for Jen, we're on to finance and operations. We're hoping we'll have a permanent incumbent in the near future. But for right now, we'll take the report that was presented in writing to the board and move on to Director of Technology and Digital Learning. And welcome Sarah Swiffetti, our new Director of Technology and Digital Learning.
I have a little presentation, so.
The digital?
I usually move around, and there's a board here, so hopefully I will not trip over myself. So I'm Sarah Scrifani. I am so very happy to be here as the Director of Technology and Digital Learning. What a wonderful, fantastic welcome I've had to the district, and I've just really been loving getting to meet all of the educators and parents and people in the community who are just so student focused. It's just been fantastic, so I'm very excited to be here. So I'm here to share with you my entry plan and some updates. So coming into the district, I really wanted to understand what our current strengths and needs were, what needed some immediate attention, and then thinking about some future planning. What are the things that really we can focus on? So all of this, I'm sorry that this is small. All of this really is under the mission and the vision and the enduring goals and aspirations, the EBCs, and the equity and inclusion statement that comes from the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. And my role is to really help support those things. And there's 3 main areas: communication, curriculum and technology leadership, and then data. So those are kind of the 3 buckets, if you will. So in each one of those areas, looking at what we currently have, under communication, for example, our website, how we communicate with parents in the community, thinking about what we do right now, and then also thinking about what needs to happen immediately, and then in the future. The same is true with technology, our current and immediate needs, and then our future opportunities to leverage what technologies exist to really support teaching and learning. And then under data, really thinking about what we have now for data collection and sharing, and where we want to go in the future with those things. So this is just kind of a visual outline of what the focus is. So in thinking about that, I wanted to share with you some of the things that I'm thinking about as I approach those 3 buckets. So I'm thinking about our communication platforms. So right now, you know that there's PowerSchool, there's Google Classroom. I'm thinking about our systems and our networks. I'm thinking about the Wi-Fi. I'm looking at the smart boards or the Promethean boards. I'm looking at all of those different things. I'm thinking about technology readiness, and that's kind of a broad category that really includes students and teachers and administrators and every person in the building. I'm also looking at our Iste Standards. So for those of you who don't know what that is, those are the standards that we have for students and the technologies that we want them to know. And also we have those same standards for the administrators and also for teachers. What does that kind of look like, and where are we on that continuum? I'm looking at the support and professional development that we have, support for kids, support for parents, support for teachers, support for everyone in our building, opportunities at each grade level for curriculum, technology integration and digital support. The needs of a senior are different than that of a kindergartner, and we have to acknowledge that. Our data collection, analysis, and sharing, opportunities for common resource sharing. So just to explain on that a little bit, when people make purchases in Houston, and then they make purchases in Reading, and then we make purchases in Region 9, we can get some efficiencies if we make those purchases together. And we also then can think about what the high yield resource-based tools for digital support of curricular goals are, and how we can best get those for every student. And then parent resources. So I am thinking about the things that you all need as parents, and where the supports are so that you can understand the technologies that your students are using, how they work, and how you can support your learners. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. So who do I talk to about those things as I'm thinking about that? So these are just the list of the various groups and individuals that I'm trying to really get to know and spend time with, that I've spent some time walking through the buildings, going to the schools, looking at what the classrooms look like, what's here, talking to our IT staff, looking at what's been happening. So all of those different things are ongoing and underway, just to really understand the needs and the opportunities. Another piece of that are all the documents, all the stuff that we have, the policies, the procedures, the databases, the current tools, the budgets, the resources that are really tied to supporting those decisions that we make about technology. What do we currently have, and where do we need to go with that? So really reviewing all those things, our prior technology advisory committee meetings, all of those different things. So those are just some things. So out of that came some things that were immediate. We are working I'm working with Stephanie to really improve our current website platform to make it a little bit more accessible and user-friendly for all, and then update those formerly Atlas curriculum documents. So those are some immediate things. For Google Classroom, I didn't want to wait to really start the year. I wanted to start the year with a real focus on the Iste Standard of empowered learners. So that's for students. And so we really talked about building capacity with Google Classroom. So that looks like having students be able to use the tools that can empower them to have more ownership over their learning goals. So more to come about that, because down at the bottom, I went to a PTA meeting today, and I definitely want to do some parent workshops or in the works in planning some of those for students and parents. Because that piece is so important for kids to be able to have the platform be a place that they can feel comfortable and navigate, so that it just becomes an extension of their learning and not something that they have to learn to get to the learning. So that was a really important focus for the beginning of the year. And then these high-yield research-based digital tools, and provide support for those. So, these are three that I believe are really, really important. Pear Deck makes slides that people create in Google interactive. So if this were a Pear Deck presentation and you had a device, I can have you all answer five different ways. You could draw, you could drag and drop, you could write. So that's one example of something that we know is a really fantastic way of engaging students in the classroom and asynchronous. All of these tools have a dual function. Screencastify lets a teacher create a video and lets a student create a video and edit those videos. They can capture their screen. That's such a fantastic teaching tool that then ties into this Ed Puzzle. And Ed Puzzle takes those videos and lets you add comments and features and explanations. So all of these things really work together, and they work within the classroom in a synchronous environment and also in an asynchronous learning environment as well. So those are some research-based digital tools that are really fantastic, and we have them for all students. And then we also have some Connecticut State Department of Education funded resources. So we've been looking at those and how those can tie in to some of the curriculum areas that already exist, and some internal systems for support. So one thing that I am working on right now is creating a place where teachers and then students and parents will be able to go to one sort of hub where I've forgotten how to hand in my Google assignment. How do I do that? Where's a little 2-minute video that shows me, that's been curated by the district, so I don't have to go to YouTube and I don't have to look through 1,000 things. I can just go to this one spot and I can say, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and here's how I can do it. So being able to create something like that, that's more of an immediate need. Then for our IT folks, we created a shared repository of resources. So when there is a patch update, when there's something that someone in the district creates, like our fabulous person who's helping over here in the back, he created a really fantastic spreadsheet that tracks some inventory. We were able to share that, not only with this school, but with others. So really being able to focus on a collaborative approach to all of that, and then understanding the student assessment data storage and analysis for some future recommendations. So really understanding what's in PowerSchool, what are the other academic systems that we have, and how those things look right now and how they might look in the future. So these are some of the immediate things that I've been working on. And then of course we move to some future planning. So these are, again, those 3 big buckets. So developing a comprehensive communication plan that really leverages technology. we talked about, sometimes you see 3 to 5 year plans. I think with technology, it's really important to have a 3-year plan because the technology just changes too quickly. So that's why it's a 3-year plan. And I think really thinking about our network and our infrastructure, the hardware, the software, and that professional learning piece really encompasses more than just teachers. It's really everyone, so that everyone really understands what's happening with the technology. And then really focusing on technology as a way to transform the learning. So not just a substitution for what's happening in class, but really something that's transformational. So I think that that's a really key need to continue to explore for the future. And then for our data, really identifying or creating a shared tool that we can really use to provide some more information with student assessment data and analysis. So that is where we are right now, and I welcome any questions or thoughts.
And welcome. Do you feel that we're on the right path with Google Classroom as far as how we're utilizing it, and if it's the right platform for us moving forward?
So there are a couple of platforms that are available. So Google Classroom is one of them. There's Schoology, there's Canva, there's a bunch of different products. The nice thing I think about Google Classroom is the integration that happens with a lot of other products and things. And talking back to that student empowerment piece, I like the piece in Google Classroom where kids can have a little bit more control and tools. So an example is that right within the Google suite, there's a little thing that looks like a little Post-it note that's yellow. It's called Google Keep, and that's a tool that you as a teacher would not use, but students would use that tool. And so what Google Keep, for those of you who don't know what it does, it's like a little digital Post-it note. And so when I want to keep something that I'm going to use multiple times, I put it right in Google Keep, and then I can use it in my document over and over again quickly, instead of having to go all the way out to a drive or find it someplace else. And you can share those little things with someone else. So, for example, the ER9 logo that I wanted to use and then have other people grab, I just put in my Google Keep, and then I can share that with someone else, and they can grab it. It's so I think that Google has some of those really nice tools for kids. So in that regard, I think we're going down a good pathway for that. Again, things change all the time, but right now, I think that's a good tool for us.
All right, you sort of touched on this, but not just in terms of achieving the goals, but do you see a lot of opportunity for efficiencies? I mean, that was one of the rationales for creating this position, was to go for line and more efficiently or effectively integrate the resources that are available through the district. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I do. I see a lot of opportunities for that.
Softball for you.
That's an easy one. The answer is yes. We have a lot of really fabulous people that are doing really fabulous things that perhaps don't have any direction or anyone to help bring those things together. Just like I did with having the IT folks have some of those repositories and things like that. We can do exactly the same thing with all the groups that are kind of like that, and that's the end result will be those efficiencies. So it won't just be financial with being able to say we purchased this tool for a less per seat price. So the seat was $5, but we got it for free because we bought it for all 3 districts. We'll be able to say we're going to do this, and then that's going to roll out to everybody. I think like tomorrow morning, working with the MASH specialists, that will be Easton and Reading, and that will be the idea will be that that rostering will become an efficient process for both groups. So that's just one example that's happening, tomorrow morning. There are so many opportunities for that I'm very excited about. Library media, science, English, they're everywhere.
Okay, well, I want to
Yeah.
get that out there, and if you'd have said, no, I don't see any opportunity. All right, thanks.
I love this, and I'm excited to see, I feel like we're suddenly talking about modern education, you know what I mean? And that sounds so exciting to me. I can't wait to see what we are able to do. Well, the educators in the ER9 are just amazing and so student-focused that I just think that this is just, I'm excited to be here to just be facilitating all of that. You have such a great mission and vision, and the legacy process and your diversity inclusion statement are so strong and so clear that I'm excited to be able to support those initiatives. It's really, I think that there's great places to go.
Good questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Guys. And I didn't trip over the cord.
That brings us to board committee reports. Any committees reporting this month?
I'm going to give you a report from the DEI committee, which is meeting on September 29th. At that meeting, there will be a presentation on the results of the survey and also the school climate surveys that will be done by an outside organization. At our last meeting, it was a combined July-August meeting, and we made a list of recommendations, which was part of the charge of the task force. And the recommendations, I'm going to try to read this, and some of these were from educators, some were from parents, and some were from administrators, and some were from board members, and some were from students. So number one, there are 8 of them. Recommend that the Joint Policy Committee review existing policies related to bias, bullying, harassment, discrimination to make sure they are aligned and readily available and in the student handbook. And then number 2, administrative review of the procedures and forms connected to policies and regulations related to bias, bullying, harassment, and discrimination. All 3 of the districts had different policies and different ways of reporting, and it was sort of, some were like, the sexual harassment reporting was like readily available, whereas like racial discrimination was like non-existent. So just to review and align those. Recommend that the boards of education include funding for professional development related to LGBTQ+ and marginalized communities, and that the assistant superintendent consider the need for that professional development for administrators, faculty, and support staff, including front office support staff, and for themselves. Some of that is already happening and has been happening. Recommend that the administrative council create an orientation for students to know the systems of support and which people provide support in each building. Recommend that the director of digital technology make information on the climate committee and the DEI task force be readily available and easy to consume, and how community members can get involved in general on school websites. Recommend that an outside consultant be engaged to work with district climate committee to revise future climate surveys. Recommend that the administration and Safe School Climate Committee pursue the development of a program similar to the Lighthouse program, and to the boards of education to secure funding for said program. Recommend that the school level climate committees and the parent organizations coordinate to facilitate small group discussion on issues related to diversity and inclusion, led by a group experienced in facilitating these conversations. And recommend that the policy committee create a statement of expectations for parent volunteers and all adults interacting with students.
Can you read the one about the lighthouse?
Yeah, that's something that if you weren't at the, like, this is what evolved after like a year of conversations. So the Lighthouse program, there's a similar program in some schools where I a teacher will have like a sticker on their window that identifies them as a safe room for say an LGBTQ plus student. They've had special training, they know this person I can talk to. The Lighthouse program is similar to that in that, but it would also include other marginalized groups or kids, and also there would be somebody trained to sort of act as almost like a translator, what we describe as like when cultures are bumping up against each other and someone doesn't understand, like you said this and it offended me, but I wasn't trying to offend you, I don't know why it's offensive to you, to make those conversations go a little more smoothly. So it would be a development of an implementation of a program like that.
What was the last one on your list? Can you repeat it?
Yeah, this is all, I can send it to you because it's all in the minutes from. Recommend that the policy committee create a statement of expectations for parent volunteers and all adults interacting with students.
And this list was a list of recommendations made to.
It's made by the DEI task force, and it's made to the specific people who were mentioned. Some is like the administration, some is the climate committee, some is policy committee, some are boards.
Questions for that?
What is that climate survey going to be done? Is that like now, here at the beginning of school?
It will be, well, there'll be a presentation on the climate survey that was done in the spring on September 29th.
Okay, so survey's done.
You mean when is it administered? I think it's annually in the spring.
Okay.
Any other committees? I would just note my usual standing comment that the policy committee continues to meet on most Friday mornings at 9 o'clock. Tomorrow, you'll be disappointed, we're not meeting at 9 o'clock, we're meeting at 3 o'clock. That brings us to item 7, discussion of possible action, change in authorized signer of the ED-099 agreement for child nutrition program. And as Dr. McLaurin hinted at earlier, I can now officially report that Dr. McKinnon will join us as superintendent of schools effective September 20th of 2021. And in anticipation of his joining us before our next regular meeting, I would look for a motion that the Reading Board of Education change the authorized signer of the ED-099 agreement for child nutrition program to Dr. Jason McKinnon, superintendent of schools effective September 20th, 2021. Mike, second. Heather. Any discussion on the motion? If there isn't, we can do a vote by show of hands, the first time in a long time. All in favor? The motion carries unanimously 7-0. And that brings us to public comment. Going once. Cheryl?
Hi, Cheryl Cowher, 3 Silverston Road, Lane, sorry. I know that Colleen mentioned that she's not to be on the board for much longer, and I understand that there are several seats to be open, and I want to thank you. You've seen us through some really crazy times, through some really crazy questions, and as both a teacher and a community member and a mom, just thank you for all the work that you do.
Cheryl?
I'm not
Give you
going
a
to
chance.
that.
You can say thank you also.
But wait, there's still going to be 2 more meetings. Plenty of
You got an
time.
election coming up.
Board member comment.
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
I want to welcome to anyone watching, all the new faces that have come to help us through this new year. Thank you, Dr. I hope you will have some overlap with Dr. McKinnon, and so maybe we'll see you again. I hope you will, but thank you so much for coming back, and we needed you, and I'm glad that you will help us. I know that it's people are aware that the school listservs can't be used to send anything that's like political or budget advocacy, but I just want to, because there are new people, refresh our commitment to that and let you know that our community is sensitized to this, and so we have to be very, very careful whenever the school resources are used, the school listserv, the school email list, that nothing political or, advocacy for a budget would go out in that way. I had the pleasure of attending the JRMS PTA meeting this morning. That is why Sarah and Megan know why it was going to be so cold in here. We had a preview, and the good news there for the pavilion that they talked to us about is that it passed the next stage of town approval, and so it's going to be, there's going to be a building permit is the next stage for that, and it's looking very optimistic that they will have it completed before winter really sets in, if the weather cooperates. And I want to acknowledge Principal Ward for fielding the questions today. It is my impression that we have a bit of a sink or swim type onboarding experience, and I was so pleased to see you swim. You know, you really did a great job.
That's an alternative.
They were tough questions. It was a lot of questions, and I think we have a wonderful parent community, and I think that fifth grade transition is tough, and so parents are talking about it, and I just want to make sure that you feel you were put on the spot, but I want to make sure that you feel welcomed, and there is support here, and then also to Sharon as well. Thank you so much for having to tell us.
Can I respond? I didn't feel like I was put on the spot.
Okay.
So first I want to just clarify and let, it's my job.
Okay.
Right, so I think that all of those questions were welcome and completely understandable. As I say to people all the time, I live with a sixth grader and an eighth grader, and I have a fifth grader who was very excited to be dismissed and ride his bike home every day and not need mom to approve it when he was in fifth grade in the schools that we attend. And I get the nervousness and anxiety that the difference between fourth grade and fifth grade middle school experience can create for parents. So all of those questions, they're questions, some of which we still have ourselves as administrators. And as I said to parents, upon the end of the meeting, that I hope they continue to ask those questions because I'm learning every day and getting used to the procedures here and some of practices that have evolved over the years here, which is one of the reasons why we met with the bus company this morning.
So the bus company is relatively new too. So, we have a lot of newness going on.
And they were wonderful. They brought 6 buses for us to try some things in the parking lot and took me for a ride and, humored me with some of my ideas. So it was wonderful.
And then just one last thing. I think also because parents are in the schools, there's a lot of focus to the exterior of the school. And there's a pile in the back of the school that every parent, we have a lot of parents pick up. There's, I know our janitorial staff is doing an amazing job in the schools, so the parents don't get to see it, they see the outside. So if there could be some way to have the exterior of the property swept, I'm saying the word swept, I don't mean sweep, just like to have somebody looking at that, there's a garbage can at the north side of the building. So I hear about it all.
What I will tell you is that was one of my goals of the summer. And what I can tell you is a week prior to school opening, that pile was gone. Okay? And we have a plan for it. It's really unfortunate that the pile is gone. We've also done a lot of house cleaning here, and worked on our efficiencies in the building, and done some cleaning of closets and all that. That was supposed to be picked up. There was some delay with the storm. So, partnering with some town resources that did not become a priority. Understandably, that was not a priority, but we're assured that within the next few days that's going to be removed.
Okay, great, thank you. Welcome.
I get it. It bothers me to know, just so we don't, no, it bothers me to know it. I will put a plug in for our custodians who did a beautiful job on the garden to the left of the building.
Yes.
Who planted and mulched the front garden. We revealed the statue a little bit more, and we really tried to clean up the side of the building. So what it looks like is really, really important because it should be a welcoming environment and a bright environment, especially for kids that I know.
So we're on the same page.
Other board member comments? I would just first thank Jamie Barrett-Terrace, who's back manning the computer and the camera here, for making our YouTube stream possible tonight. And also take the opportunity to thank Dr. McMorrin again. The last time he left us, we were all remote by Zoom, but this is almost certainly going to be his last Reading meeting as the interim superintendent. So I just want to thank him for his years of service before and for being willing to come back and pitch in. If there is no additional board member comment, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Mike, second. John, any objection? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 9:15. Thank you.